Hey guys, welcome into week 13 of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Yes, it's not Saturday. It is a beautiful Monday evening. We are what are we about here? 40 minutes from game time here, Scotty. Beautiful night between the Ravens and the Rams. I'm pretty fired up for this game, not going to lie. For some, it was a great week of fantasy football. You inch that much closer to, earning your spot in the playoffs or locking up a bye or hopefully you didn't find yourself on the way out. But if you are like me and you are a Green Bay Packers fan, last night was abysmal. It was not the way you want to end your week, despite going 5-1 on the week. Scotty, that was bad.
As a Devontae Adams owner, it was painful.
At least
then it was
you got into
glorious.
the end zone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then it was just painful again because for every type of game script out there, you even as I was rooting against you for obvious reasons for my Vikes, you never want a game script so bad as the owner of a star wide receiver where it's they're behind, but they're only so far behind. They're going to have to air it out.
Right.
Oh, they're going to take him off the field. Oh, they're going to take both of them off the field, and they're going to watch for the last 6 minutes. You never want that in fantasy football. That's bad.
It was oh, man. I don't even know what to say. The pass protection was nowhere to be found. Rodgers was getting crushed. It was looked like the same game script that the Chargers ran at them, just bring ultimate pressure on both sides. Whether it's Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa, Aaron Rodgers just doesn't do well against either Bosa brothers or in California. I don't know what the common factor here is, but it has to do with one of those two things. As soon as Brian Bulaga went down, it was just game, set, match.
Yeah, no, it's been their record is great, and it's going to be a photo finish to the playoffs for your Packers there, but they do not look like the terrifying Green Bay Packers.
Not after this week.
I've become accustomed to. No, that was
God. That was bad.
It was, and it's that offense. I mean, you're just used to under a healthy Aaron Rodgers. It's where anything is possible. Like no matter how down they are, you always are like, don't worry about it. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's coming back. Like this is scary. Like for everybody else. And now it's like, well, mathematically, I don't know how they're going to turn this around.
Matt Wakefield, I see you trolling me in the comments, and I'm just going to choose to ignore you.
That man wants some Saturday morning snap mugs.
I'm literally going to do it right after this. I will send. Hey, Matt, drop your email and I will send it to you.
There you go. Drop that.
For all the beautiful people out there not named Matt Wakefield, go ahead and click subscribe. We would appreciate it. And hopefully we can help you win your week. Last week was a good one. We hit a little home run on Jonathan Williams. Showed out. Had 104 yards on 26 carries. Got into the end zone. Beautiful game. 21, I believe, fantasy points. And hopefully that train can roll forward for him. His name is on the list here, and we are going to talk about him tonight again. But some other names coming into the picture. So we got Benny Snell. We also have Rashad Penny, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, N'Keal Harry, and Ryan Griffin. And there's a guy that we'll talk about if time permits, but Cole Beasley is a guy that you want to bring up as a potential pickup this week.
I do, and it kind of pains me, but it's just he's one of those you have to at least acknowledge that this guy is a very reliable, at least flex option in fantasy football, and I feel like that's been said every second week of this season. So
he hasn't been bad. That is
no, he hasn't. It's not a sexy name. God, is he not a sexy name?
But reliable is definitely him.
Yeah, so that's what he's proving week in and week out. We'll talk about that later.
So week 13 is an important week. It is the last week of the regular season for fantasy football. It's also a week where we have no buys. Woo-hoo!
The buy apocalypse is over.
It's so nice. It's so nice. And last week was a big one. Cards, Chiefs, Chargers, Vikings, a lot of fantasy relevant players on bye last week. I know some people paid for it. That's why we told you make those trades earlier. If you can, sell off a guy who has a late buy for an equal player in value who maybe has a good playoff schedule and has already had their buy, it might have been a good move. Hopefully, if you didn't choose to take advantage of that, it didn't come back to bite you this week. Hopefully, you got the win that you needed. Like I said, I went 5-1, fighting for a playoff spot in our listener league. I think I'm the only one of the four of us that have a chance here, unfortunately. I think Mark might have an outside chance. Other than that, I mean, it was a pretty good week for me, other than losing a close one. The only matchup that I lost this week, I am in 6th place. Only 6 make the playoffs. I'm fighting for a spot. I put up the 3rd most points this week, lost to the team that's in last place that decided to put up a career week and score like 160. Like I put up one.
Yeah, I hate to see
I put
that.
up like 141. And he put up like 160, and I don't think his team's put up 160 in like 3 weeks combined, and he just goes off, and I'm probably going to miss the playoffs because of
that. I had a similar situation where in my keeper league, where one of my teams is doomed to not win my division, and I think the playoffs are probably out of reach this year. But Landon's team had a legit shot at winning our division, and my team decided to pretty much just completely all show up this weekend, barring Cooper Kupp just exploding tonight for him. I think I doomed his hopes of winning our division. So that makes me happy. It doesn't actually help me. It just makes me really happy.
As the people who sit in the bottom of their leagues, look, don't give up. You can definitely play spoiler. You can ruin some dreams, and that is satisfying in itself.
It's part of why you play it. It's just
if you can't be first and you don't want to be last, at least if you're in that, I'm going to miss the playoffs, but I'm going to ruffle some feathers. Go out, pick up, spend your fab, pick up some guys, be competitive, try to get victories, make those guys earn their playoff spots. Don't just give things up. Now is the time to grind no matter what position you're in. If you're in a keeper league going into next year, try to pick up some guys that might have some long-term value. Rashad Penny is going to be one of those guys that we talk about. And I think that's why he's as high on our list as he is, because things are changing in Seattle just slightly. So let's jump into the waivers. We do have Benny Snell Jr. ranked above Rashad Penny, and I think that is the case because of potential ability to win your week next week. James Conner does not appear to be trending to play this coming Sunday. So Benny Snell, 20. What was his final carry count? Was it 26 or was it 20? Oh, I'm going to have to vet that really quick. 21. 21 carries for 98 yards, just over 4 carry. 4.5 a carry. Looked really solid and got a little bit in the passing game as well. If James Conner doesn't play next week, which I don't think he will, Benny Snell is an absolute stud. Only owned in 5% of leagues. And real quick, do you happen to know who they play this coming week?
They are facing Cleveland. Then they go to Arizona and Buffalo.
The Browns. So they've got the Browns and then they've got the Cardinals.
Yeah, Browns and Cardinals. I mean, Buffalo shows up, but those, I'd say Browns and Arizona, you could probably do worse.
Buffalo shows up, but only really in the secondary. Against the run, they've been bottom 10 against the fantasy running back.
I mean, all in all, it's looking pretty good for Snell. I think that's why he gets the push above Penny, because even just looking at Penny's schedule, He's got Minnesota next. We all know how I feel about that. The Rams and then Carolina. So any day of the week, you give me the Browns, Buffalo, and the Cardinals. I'm taking that schedule.
The nicest thing to see with Benny Snell is that coming back off of that lingering knee injury, there was no real effect. You didn't really see his play limited. You didn't see his workload limited in times of opportunity. So that was really good to see out of him. If you played him, congrats to you. And if you didn't, well, it's all good. You didn't really miss out on a whole lot. Only finished with 10.8 points in a half-point scoring system, but he didn't get into the end zone. He gets into the end zone, it's a 16, 17-point day, different story.
Yeah, no,
So
for sure.
to see basically a 100-yard game with 20-plus carries, that's what I want to see out of my running backs. I want that high floor. I want that volume. And if James Conner doesn't play, which we're expecting he won't, absolute lock next week to basically sub in and give you some points. So if you're in the neighborhood of starting Brian Hill or starting Bo Scarborough, I would play Benny Snell over both of those guys without a doubt. If you're in the J.D. McKissick, same thing. That's kind of the way that I'm going. And there's what about Joe Mixon? Benny Snell or Joe Mixon going into this week?
Oh man, I mean, Mixon had his moments this week. I only watched a bit of the game, but
He was a little bit of a dud.
But you know what? You make a fine point. That would actually be quite a debate against if you're going against the Browns with a guy like Snell after 100-yard game, or
Mixon against the Jets or Snell against the Browns.
And you know what? That's actually something I was going to add in more towards the end, but now that you brought it up, I actually have the New York Jets, who are only 23% owned, as one of my trending guys to look at actually adding. After the week they had, I had them on one of my teams, and I think they got me 18 points. I don't know if I'd really want to take on the Jets D right now. So that actually bodes well for taking Snell. And this is the time of the year where you sometimes have to start making these decisions about, starting to sit guys with big names for situations that you just absolutely can't ignore. And the Jets are trending the right way. And just while we're on the topic, because I doubt we're going to talk about defenses to add for very long this week. But the New York Jets, like I said, less than 25% owned in standard leagues. And their next 3 weeks, they're taking on Cincy, Miami, and then Baltimore. So take that with a grain of salt. If you're rolling them out against Baltimore, I mean, you're doing that at your own peril. But Miami and Cincinnati, you want to talk about two inept football teams. Get them while they're hot.
Gross. So Rashad Penny. Oh, sorry. How much would you spend on Benny Snell of your fab budget? You've talked about, don't hold it back. Spend it if you got it. Let's say Benny Snell gets a week or two more work like this. James Conner's going to be back eventually, it appears. Let's just say you get a 2-week rental on Benny Snell in 2 solid matchups the next couple of weeks. How much would you spend on him if you were running back?
Well, that's the thing. It's week 13, right? I mean, if you're talking 2 weeks, I definitely in at least the 25% range, because I don't get what you're going to be doing in week 15 with it if you don't get your guy.
You want to have some emergency money, no doubt.
You most certainly do, and you don't want to spend 75% or something. I'm just saying, as we get closer and closer to the fantasy playoffs here, and you want to keep some for the fantasy playoffs because hopefully you're going to make a run, right? But that being said, especially if you're in those situations we talked about where you're fighting for the last wild card in your fantasy playoffs, or maybe a division win, make sure you get your buy-in covered for next season or something. I don't know. I'd go for it now because, I just find when people are passive in fantasy, especially if they're in kind of tight races and the other guys are not being passive and they're being aggressive and you're just kind of like, well, I'll roll it out and see how this goes. I'm sure it will be fine. And other guys are spending their fab, doing their research, taking a bit more risk. I think more often than not, it's usually those guys that will actually beat you out by 10 points, and you'll be all pissed when it actually comes to the last week that you weren't maybe a little more active when you could have been more proactive about trying to win your division or your wild card spot now.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. For me, I would agree with the 25 to even maybe 30, 35%.
Yep. It depends.
Right. And let's face it, the Alexander Madisons of the world that are the big handcuffs that could potentially win you the league if something happened to Dalvin Cook, guys like that are gone. They shouldn't be on your waiver wires. They should be stashed away. So Benny Snell and Rashad Penny, well, that's why they're at the top of our list. They preside potential going forward, but they're also big handcuffs. If anything happens to James Conner further and he's not able to return, Benny Snell is locked and loaded for the rest of the season.
And at a certain point too, when you talk about a team like Pittsburgh, I mean, they're in it. They have a half decent record, but if say they lose a few, we get to a point where a guy like Connor, why would you rush him back? Is more you do when you talk about handcuffs, and once teams actually legitimately fall out of contention, I do think there's a bit more of a question of like, okay, this guy could be ready to go,
right?
But at a certain point, why would we bring him back this season? And then the handcuff all of a sudden is the starter, because for fantasy, that's all you care about.
That is true. That's very true.
Yeah.
No, you make good point. Good point.
Yeah, but no, Snell could be in for a really interesting few weeks here. So I think he's on a lot of guys' radars, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I wonder if he'll take his helmet off and try to hit somebody with it.
That's where you went with that? Did you happen to see, I think, who shared it? Was it Landon? The Browns tailgate. Did you see that video?
Oh, the pinatas. Oh, yes, I did see the pinatas. Oh, football fans are just the most compassionate people out there.
What do you think? Should we meet somewhere in the middle?
Every time I see it, I just can't not hear. They gave me a trophy. I once took my skate off and tried to stab somebody with it. I'm the only guy who's ever tried to do that. Oh.
You want to meet in the middle at about 30% fab for these?
Yeah, that sounds absolutely reasonable.
Okay. So Benny Snell, 30% fab. Book that.
Yep. Book it.
Rashad Penny, we're going to talk about him right now. If you don't know who he is, running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, things have changed in Seattle just slightly, like not completely, but Chris Carson fumbles the ball twice in a very important game. We've seen this happen before. This is his seventh and eighth fumble on the year so far. And this has been a point of contention for Pete Carroll all season. He has said now two things. Rashad Penny is going to be more involved, but Chris Carson has been an integral piece of our success. Take those two pieces as you will. For me personally, I don't think that Chris Carson goes away. And the reason why Rashad Penny's not higher up on our list is because I think that his workload this coming week, at best, maybe is a 50-50 timeshare. That might equate to like 9 to 12 carries. I just don't think there's enough volume for him to do anything special. And to Landon's point, you're not going to know if Chris Carson gets benched or is not going to get the same workload until the game has started, right? So for you to plan for that is tough. For me, I'd rather have Benny Snell. I would think I might rather have Jonathan Williams at this point if I'm in a non-keeper league, just strictly redraft. I would want Jonathan Williams moving forward for the next week or two. I think he provides more upside. But Rashad Penny in a keeper league, or if you believe in the long-term value and you don't believe in Chris Carson, go for him. I'd be less bullish on Rashad Penny. I might spend only like 5 to 10%. I know your point, spend it, but really what upside does Rashad Penny give you realistically? Like, Chris Carson's not going away.
No, and I do agree with you on this one. If you're in a dynasty or keeper league, I think Rashad Penny is essentially the top of our entire list here. Outside of maybe N'Keal Harry, but that's just because I was very impressed by that catch. But as far as the actual running backs on that list, for the next 2 weeks, there's no doubt that the rest of these guys are much stronger plug-and-play options, because as we were discussing a bit while we were prepping for tonight, the best case scenario I see is Penny getting maybe a 50-50 split with Chris Carson, because Carson's not going anywhere. He's been fantastic the past few years. Maybe Pete Carroll sends him a bit of a message and doesn't give him his full workload next week to say, we can't have you fumbling 2 times. They are taking on the Vikes too, and the Vikes are not a joke on defense. I do not like starting running backs against the Vikings in any situation.
No.
But like we did say, I do think Rashad Penny does give you, as he has now proven, there's a bit of an explosiveness to him. And once again, it's that rolling the dice type of player, which is nerve-wracking to ever start in fantasy football. He has the speed to turn one of those runs into a 58, 60-yarder with a score. But as we've seen, Chris Carson could also just smash mouth style it for the most of the games. Rashad Penny gets tied up for his 6 to 8 carries, and you're left with an absolute dud.
Right.
So higher ceiling now that he's kind of proved himself, but the very lowest of floors. But if you're in some sort of keeper dynasty league, especially if maybe you're not going to win it all this year, that's why it's really exciting for me to actually see Rashad Penny start to look like that first round draft pick that that they spent all that draft capital on. I do feel like the franchise wants him to succeed. And as much as Chris Carson has been doing everything he can to prove he's an elite, like, starting running back, I feel like there's a bit of that franchise that is like, but we did spend a lot of draft capital on Rashad Penny. Like, if they could choose one of the guys to work out, I feel like it would be Penny to say, hey, look, we made a good decision. It just took a few seasons to, like, really pan out.
I don't disagree.
I mean, he looked that run, them bouncing off his shoulders. He looked electric. If he could just do that once a game, give it in 3 weeks, this would be a whole different discussion. So it's worth his stash. I think he's a great long-term stash if you don't need immediate help with any of these other guys that in 2 weeks, like, if you don't need running backs right now, but like it's a keeper or dynasty league, then I'd rather stash Rashad Penny, because in 2-3 weeks, the other guys on this list very well could just be handcuffed backups that you don't actually have much interest in, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing too with Chris Carson, he, despite his fumbling issues, has been great. He's 11 in standard, number 9 running back in PPR, absolute stud.
Yep. No, he's not going to drop his starting role. I think there just might be a bit more of a window for him to actually, for Rashad Penny to be relevant.
Fantastic. We'll end it there. We're going to talk one more. At the running back position, Jonathan Williams. Now, we hit a little home run on him last week in the waiver show. Told some people that I liked him, that you should pick him up. Really paid off. Balled out. Looked exactly like what Marlon Mack would give you. Maybe not to the extent of, the 170, 200 game, but broke 100 yards, got into the end zone, was involved in the passing game. For me, this guy checks all the boxes, and his ownership percentage has reflected that totally. Up 60% in the last 2 days. Was 3% going into this weekend, now sits at 63%. So people are taking notice. They see the big game on the Thursday night, and they want a little bit of the action. So Jonathan Williams, what's your take on him? I'm really high on him. I still think that he can have success. Marlon Mack is not, his timeline isn't really certain at this point. We know that he's not going to play week 13. Going past that, let's not look too far, but week 13, he's got a decent matchup. Tell me what you think about Jonathan Williams.
I think this is another strong candidate to help you win now, especially because you know that there's going to be no Marlon Mack for Week 13. They're one of those teams that actually has a bit of a committee going even when Marlon Mack's not there.
Correct. Naeem Hines has been involved.
Yeah, they've got their passing down guys, and even when Marlon Mack is there, you still see enough of the other guys, like, with him as a lead back, that I don't think it's a clear-cut home run that this guy will absolutely dominate every touch. That being said, it was a really impressive game. There's no reason why he shouldn't. I'm a little leery of any backfield that has that many names that actually have some skill. Week to week, a guy like Hines is sometimes like a sneaky play and flex if you're really desperate in a buy. I've seen it happen. Some decent success.
Right.
But I like we spoke about, for the workload, I really think that's why Benny Snell is more the clear-cut choice, because I'd argue that Pittsburgh really wants, as long as Connor is out, does not have the rest of the skill guys. But that being, I would definitely take him ahead of Rashad Penny if you need to win now at the running back position. I do think that he's got the much clearer path to Week 13 fantasy points. So I'm very high on him, just like you are. I know that he was your guy, and you guys love him because he hit the home run last week. You could be in for a follow-up as long as Marlon Mack is out. At least for the running, I really do think that Williams could pick up some solid points this week.
The Tennessee Titans prove as a tough test. So we'll temper expectations just slightly. But let's talk really quickly about the guys that we would start Jonathan Williams over. Let's look at some of these matchups. So David Montgomery has been probably one of the most underwhelming rookies that has gotten a workload. He's basically averaging double-digit carries for the whole season. Would you start Jonathan Williams against the Tennessee Titans or David Montgomery against the Lions this week on the road? I know.
Oh, boy, that's tough. I mean, that Detroit defense does not scare me. So, and the Titans are actually playing a whole lot better now than they have been in a long time. So you know what? I'm going to say I'd go Montgomery.
You're going Montgomery over Williams?
I'll plant my flag in Montgomery there, but I will agree he has been incredibly underwhelming, especially with the amount of people that sank. I don't know, sometimes maybe a third of their entire draft capital to get that guy. So I will go Montgomery in that situation, but it's close. It's very close for me.
What about Singletary against the Cowboys? Singletary against the Cowboys or Williams against the Tennessee Titans?
I think I go Williams.
I would as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what the status of Devonta Freeman is right now. Let's assume it's Brian Hill. People are still going down that rabbit hole. Brian Hill or Quadri Olison, either of those guys going up against the Saints, or would you go Jonathan Williams against the Titans?
The Saints looked a little more human recently, but I still think their defense is pretty solid. So I'm going to avoid the Saints.
Let's go rapid fire here. Joe Mixon against the Jets or Jonathan Williams?
You know what? Williams. Those Bengals, my God.
Tevin Coleman against the Ravens or Jonathan Williams?
I think I'd go Coleman against the Ravens. I actually do.
Ronald Jones against the Jags or Jonathan Williams?
Jonathan Williams. I just can't do it, Bucks. Through the air, and always through the air. Buccaneers.
A couple more. Miles Sanders against the Dolphins or Jonathan Williams against the Titans? I'm going Miles Sanders
against the Dolphins.
I'm definitely going Miles Sanders.
If you can go against Bengals or you can go against Miami, just always do that.
I think that's okay, one more. Carlos Hyde against the Patriots or Jonathan Williams against the Titans?
Williams. I'm not touching those. I'm not touching the Pats.
Cool. There's the temp. How much would you spend on Jonathan Williams?
You know what? Because of his situation, I would put him in the same category as Benny Snell. It would be kind of a 1A-B situation for me, I think. I assume in this situation you need a running back that can win you week 13 at the position. So my list would be going 30% for Benny Snell, one waiver. Number 2, 30 for Williams. If I can't get Benny Snell, I better be trying to slot in Williams in there so I can try to win
and
this
if
week.
You're joining us late and you see that we've got Rashad Penny ranked number 2 and we're only going to spend 10% of our fab on him, backtrack and just listen to why we're ranking him that way. You'll get it. You are smart people. We are going to take a little break here, and we're going to tell you guys to please, if you are with us, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are growing slowly but surely. We're looking to get to that 100 sub mark so that we can get some custom URLs and get some nice little perks here. But if you guys are liking the stream and you are digging these waiver segments every single Monday, then please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free. Did you guys know that? Free.
Absolutely free.
Free is a good thing. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button. If you aren't sure where to find us, we are on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much wherever you can get a podcast. We are also there as well. It comes out every single Saturday. I'm Mac. I run our main account on social media. It's at SMS_fantasy on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can get Scott. He's one of our co-hosts, as well as Landon and Mark. Their individual handles are in the description. Scott is the Scott_SMS on all major platforms. Nice little follow.
Absolutely.
And all the beautiful videos that we roll out every single Saturday. This is producer Scott. This is the man that makes it all happen.
Oh, it's just all for the fans, Got to put all the beautiful mugs out there. That's and right. Even the ugly ones landed.
All right, let's jump into our wide receivers. Now, Deebo Samuel, people were unsure if he would play or not, going into this week, but absolutely torched the Green Bay Packers. Looked really solid. He's really, really fast, man. Currently 67% owned. He's starting to creep up there. This is 70% about the time where I say, you know what, probably not a good waiver wire guy just because he's not owned in that many leagues. But we're just underneath that threshold, so I'm going to say that he still counts. If Deebo Samuel is available on your waiver wire right now, this second, how much are you putting down on him?
Well, I think his 67% really reflects how much you're going to have to put down to try to get him. He's, like you said, he's barely a waiver wire guy anymore. I know it might sound like I'm aggressive on almost every player we talk about, but the reality is, like some of these names that we're tossing around, Deebo Samuel could be a flex play the rest of your regular season and the playoffs, potentially, the way it's going, right? So the rest of the names that you see on here, N'Keal Harry, there's situations that they could really pan out, but I would argue Deebo Samuel already has panned out. So you still actually get a guy with a great track record now for the 2019 season. So for this, I'm saying spend, baby, spend. I'm saying highest percentage on this board to me is Deebo Samuel. If you need a flex or wide receiver play, he's established himself as one of the wide receivers. He's fast, he's terrifying, and you know what? Garoppolo is not a slouching quarterback. That guy can wing it. And with Kittle back, kind of probably drawing double coverage again, like who knows? So I'd say if you need flex or wide receiver, you're spending probably 40 or 50, depending on how thrifty you've been all season, because a lot of people after that torching of the Green Bay Packers are going to be putting a lot of their fab on the table to go for Deebo, and that's how I see it going down.
Yeah, the only spot that I can say that worries me a tiny bit with him, he was only targeted twice last night, caught both of them. 50 yards and a touchdown. So he gave you, on limited volume, he gave you about as much as you could get. But the last 3 weeks, he's been solid. 12 points, 17.5, 15.2. That comes against the Seahawks, Cardinals, and Packers. Next couple weeks, he's got the Ravens, Saints, Falcons, Rams, and Seahawks again. So there are some decent matchups in there, and there are some, not so great matchups, but here's where he can sort of flip the script in some of these matchups. Emmanuel Sanders, when healthy, will be the number one receiver for the defense to cover. You also have to factor in the best tight end in the league in George Kittle. He pretty much cemented that last night for me. I am happy to say that Kittle is better than Kelsey, better than Ertz.
I'm not arguing after seeing that guy just streak down the field after his injuries. He's got to be number one.
Gear, and it is just unstoppable. It's almost Gronk-like. And Rob Gronkowski was on the Lefko show. They did a little interview. Lefko asked him, who's the best tight end in the league? And he's like, George Kittle, man. He reminds me a lot of myself. And I'm like, damn.
He's scary, but I agree that that kind of factors into another narrative that Deebo Samuels could play into, where what's really a best friend of like a double covered elite tight end and a clear cut number one is a really, really speedy guy to cut through the open space that has to be somewhere in that secondary.
Yeah, no, and they've got other weapons that they can use too, so it's a pretty solid Receiving core, Marquise Goodwin, Dante Pettis hasn't been on the field since Debo really broke out. But I'm comfortable with Debo. I'm with you. I think 40% is a really good number for him, especially if you need wide receiver help. Yeah, man, Debo is fantastic. Let me just put that on the dock here. I'm gonna let you introduce AJ Brown, talk about him just a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, at this point in the season, if Mariota was still at the helm, I really don't think we'd have any Tennessee Titan receiving threats on our board. But the emergence of Ryan Tannehill and the vanquishing of Mariota to the bench has changed things for at least a lot of players, I think, in fantasy land. And both Corey Davis and A.J. Brown, I think I've seen at least an uptick. But A.J. Brown is the clear-cut favorite of Ryan Tannehill. And Tannehill's brought a lot of energy to this passing attack. And whether it's with his legs and him scrambling in for touchdowns or just, I don't know, the dude actually looks like he believes he can win games, like on his back. He knows
how to win
games.
And
he's proved it. And he looks like he believes it. Where Mariota, to me, always just kind of looked a little scared.
Kinda.
Being said, terrified. But that being said, that brings us back to A.J. Brown. He's only owned in 16% of leagues, and justifiably so, because this is like a very different Tennessee Titans passing attack than what we've watched almost the entire season. I think this number is going to grow. I think A.J. Brown, give it another week like we saw this past week, and I think you're going to be looking at least maybe a 35 to 40% ownership stake. So I'm pretty high on him. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a must grab because Tannehill is looking good for sure, but this is by no means a veteran coming back that everybody knows is elite or something. So this could be right now just like a really great hot streak where he came in and switched things up. People are happy that there's change and they're getting maybe a little lucky, looking really good. So A.J. Brown's not somebody I'm willing to plant a flag in and say, go put out numbers similar to Debo, in my opinion. But it's somebody to look at least, in my opinion. He's definitely the favorite of the new quarterback situation, and there's always value in trying to grab that before, I guess, maybe he fully emerges as a real fantasy option. But I definitely, like, if you don't need somebody right away that you have to slot in this week, he's an intriguing piece. Because if he has another great week, he could be a flex. Certainly.
Well, I mean, so he's been quite interesting this year. When we saw him get drafted, A.J. Brown, we all looked at him and we were like, man, this dude is special. He's a physical specimen. He led Ole Miss, who also had DK Metcalf on that team. He led that receiving core, was the wide receiver one, was a complete standout in college football. And then we saw him get drafted to the Titans and we're like, are you kidding me? Like, this is as bad as it can get. And it certainly looked that way under Mariota. Now, 5 of his 11 games have been bust games. He hasn't been a guy that you've been able to start on a weekly basis with any confidence. However, he has had 2 blow-up games where he's been a wide receiver 1 on the week. So he does provide you the upside, but he also provides you no floor. I think when you look at the next couple weeks, Indy, Oakland, Houston, Saints in championship week isn't great, but I think he could be a guy that maybe gives you some upside in the last couple weeks of the season. Indy, Oakland, Houston. I like the chances here for A.J. Brown to step up and have some bigger games down the stretch for you. And I agree, Scott. He could be a low-end flex play for you. If you play in like a 12, 14, 16 team league, A.J. Brown could be a considerable flex down the stretch for you.
Yeah, he's and you could also factor in kind of like the Rashad Penny thing. If you're in a keeper league or you're listening to this and you're not in playoff contention this year, but you're looking for intriguing pieces that are readily accessible, this could be a really great audition for him to be the wide receiver that I think everybody was hoping would happen before the draft, and then he landed in Tennessee, and we were all like, Probably not. But, new quarterbacks change systems completely. And I heard some rumblings about some people think maybe Tannehill's the guy for Miami.
I believe you may have said that.
For Tennessee. I am one of them who has said it. Long term, obviously, that I think they need a real solution. But if he's the favorite and he ends up being there 2 seasons, 3 seasons, like maybe he's fantasy relevant all of a sudden.
They've certainly got enough pieces to go around. Are you good with 5 to 10% fab?
Yeah, that sounds about right. He's
I think that's going to win it.
Yeah, there's too many other guys out there right now, Debo Samuel like that feel like they're time sensitive. If you don't shell it out right now, you're not going to get them. I don't know if anyone's really feeling that way about AJ Brown right now.
I would agree.
Yeah.
2 more to go here. N'Keal Harry comes in at number 6, wide receiver for the New England Patriots. We saw him in limited action in a gross game against the Dallas Cowboys.
Filthy.
Really rainy, nasty.
Catch of the game.
Yeah, catch of the game. Maybe catch
Easy.
not catch of the week. James Washington had a pretty solid catch.
Based on just the situation and the weather, we could maybe give him catch of the week because that was hell.
That was hell. Like we said, though, N'Keal Harry presents a big-bodied, reliable, red zone threat for the New England Patriots. What they desperately need. Tom Brady was vocal about N'Keal Harry, said he liked what he saw. He was happy to try to utilize him. That wasn't his only red zone target in the game. And so I think if you are desperate, more desperate than A.J. Brown, you can go out and you can finally put N'Keal Harry in your lineup with the expectation of getting 0, but with the upside of getting a touchdown. So the volume's not there for him yet. It might be in the coming weeks. He might be a big playoff piece for the Patriots, like in terms of team play, not fantasy play, but making an impact on the field. So look out for him. Take some notes on him because he might be a guy that climbs draft boards come next year's fantasy season. So if you play in a keeper league, I would stash this guy 100%. Depending on what your keeper rules are, you can get him for super, super cheap. For us, it would be a 10th round keeper. Other leagues, they do, ADP plus a round. But might be a guy that might be worth stashing if you play in a keeper league or a guy that you can maybe play down the stretch. But he's intriguing to me. I want a piece of him. I'm not willing to spend, outside of 5% to get him, but I would want him on my team. If it was a redraft, if it was keeper, I would spend more. But I think for general rule of thumb, we're going to go like 5% for me. What do you think?
No, I agree. Literally, the argument for AJ Brown and N'Keal Harry are very similar situations. They're both very talented players. Now it's just like they get an opportunity to actually showcase their talent. One, because he has a quarterback that sees it and seems to want to go to him often. The other, he's on the field finally and healthy. So They both get opportunity to showcase for the rest of the season. So as far as especially a keeper stash, it's a great time to do it because they both, haven't performed this year for various reasons. Grab them now if you have nothing, especially if you have nothing to lose. If it's all for next season, guys like this is the time where you can win next season. I'm not going to call it dumpster diving. N'Keal Harry is incredibly gifted. AJ Brown, very talented. They just haven't had any real situation to excel this year. Next year could be a very different story.
Very different. It's a good point. Like even if you are, like we said earlier, bottom of the barrel, if you are not even close to the playoffs, N'Keal Harry is a guy that you should scoop, that you should have on your team keeping for next year. 100%.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's really no reason not to. I actually like N'Keal Harry's situation more than AJ Brown's just because it's actually been injury that's kept him out. Everybody knows how talented a guy he is, and the Patriots are kind of famous for getting guys the ball, and they don't have a great receiving for. I mean, there's no reason for N'Keal Harry to not get the spotlight now that he's back and healthy. I think it's going to be a really fun end of season, and it's a juggernaut on defense, so we'll see what happens with that offense, but it's going to be fun to watch. If you have him on the bench, at least on your team, you can end up with just a great value stash. They're terrible.
Okay, tight end. We're jumping into the tight end market. I'm only going with one guy.
Oh, it's a dirty market.
Now, Ryan Griffin has been a tight end one twice so far this year. Not a tight end, sorry, the tight end one. Like better than Kelsey, better than Ertz. He got into the end zone for the 4th time in the last 5 weeks. For reference, Ryan Griffin caught 6 touchdowns in 5 seasons. 6 touchdowns in 5 seasons with the Texans. Has caught 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games with the Jets. He is the go-to guy for Sam Darnold in the red zone. They're drawing up plays for him. He's getting some red zone targets. Ryan Griffin is a safe tight end one rest of season, whether you like it or not. So if you are desperate at tight end or you lost your Austin Hooper and you still have no one to play, if Ryan Griffin is available, because he's only 44% owned, I don't know how, go out and get this man now. Please do it. Fantasy MVP. Okay, that's too far. But you know what I'm saying? Because the tight end landscape is so gross. He only scored 9 points this week, really just the touchdown hoisting his production. But at the tight end position, that's good enough for like a fringe tight end 1/2 performance.
No, I agree. And, we were both decently on the Chris Herndon train before that ended horrifically. And week to week, I mean, this past week, Sam Darnold, fantasy MVP when he's not down with mono. I mean, it's up and down week to week, like it seems the whole Jets offense kind of is. But when they're hitting their stride, they are interesting. And the tight end landscape is terrible. We were talking about how many like legitimate tight end ones there are this season, and there are not nearly enough to go around. Oh, God, so if Griffin is still there on your waiver wire, I'd say just try to get him once again. Even if you have a tight end, get him now, because this consistency is not something that should keep him on a waiver wire. Like Correct. At the tight end position, some of the biggest names I know as someone who started Greg Olsen in one league over Jared Cook. Sometimes the big names are not actually even the guys who pull the most consistent numbers, because Ryan Griffin, like you said, man, he's up there this past 5-6 weeks. If you've been starting him, you're happy. You're fine.
I'll read you his last couple finishes here. 22.6, 8, 19.4, 8.8.
Yep.
Plays the Bengals. Plays the Bengals this coming week, then the Dolphins, then the Ravens, then the Steelers. Sign me up for the Bengals and the Dolphins the next 2 weeks. I love that. I think it's amazing. I'm going to put in 20% bid on him. You good with that?
I am, because what was my one piece of advice that always comes to fruition in fantasy football?
Spend it.
Spend it, baby, spend it. And give me them Bengals. Give me them Dolphins. Anywhere you can.
Give it to me.
So you put those two together, and I'm all about that.
I am certainly with you. Well, listen, if you guys have been enjoying the stream, if we at all helped you or helped you figure out some of your waiver claims, go ahead, click that subscribe button for the last time. Leave us a comment below. Leave us a thumbs up. We would appreciate that so much. And if you want to get us elsewhere, right up above you, I always forget it's this hand, right up above you, SMS_fantasy is our main account. You can get Scott on his account right over here at @thescott_SMS. Go ahead and grab his handle. Go ahead and get at me. We'll help you throughout the week. We're not going to be those guys that ignore the DMs. We are in the trenches with the people. We are the people. And look, hope you guys are going to enjoy this Monday Night Football game. I'm going to say that the Ravens boat race, absolutely steamroll the Los Angeles Rams tonight. I hope to God that Cooper Kupp gets targeted. I hope Jared Goff comes out and has a decent game. I hope Todd Gurley continues his relevancy, but I really, in my heart of hearts, just think that the Ravens are too good.
I think the Ravens are going to win too, but I at least hope it's a game. I hope. I'm sick of seeing Goff with like 2 fantasy points at the end of the game, so I'm hoping that he at least puts up a fight.
Well, Scotty, this was fun, man. I think we got 7 real solid ads, and I'll certainly be queuing up some of these guys in my leagues.
Oh, I'm putting in my waiver bids as we speak. It's going to be a good week.
All right. Listen, guys, have a great week. We will see you. Look for our YouTube preview of our Saturday morning episode. That comes out about Thursday, Friday-ish, depending on our scheduling. It's been typically Friday the last couple weeks. So
mostly Friday.
Look at for the sneak peek video on Friday, and then Saturday morning we will have the podcast without the videos. We'll have everything out there for you. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and we'll see you then.
Good luck this week.
Bye.